Hi everybody, this is Petra from Wildcat Hollow Farm, and this is Barnaby, and he is going to be the topic today. We're going to be talking about flying dogs. Of course, naturally, we all know dogs don't fly, but we have been asked several times how hard it is to get the dog to the US. And I would have to answer this with, that depends. For all of you who have not been following us or don't know what all this is about, we're at the moment still in Germany, residing here, and we bought a farm in the US, in Missouri, and we're going to move there shortly. Well, actually, we're in the process of moving there. I already had to sell my horse because it is extremely expensive to move a horse over there. And by extremely expensive, I mean like in between $6,000 and $8,000. So way too much that we could afford. So the horse had to be sold, sadly. But Poophead here, Barnaby, is going to accompany us to the States, and getting your dog to the States or to a different country in general is something. It could be really easy if you have money in abundance, which we don't have. If you do have a lot of money, the easiest thing would be probably to hire a pet service, a pet transportation service. You get a quote from them, and it's really kind of uncomplicated. All you have to do is make sure your dog has all the shots and everything, and you get a quote from them, and they will basically pick up the dog and accompany him on the flight and get him over there. But the cheapest offer I got from them was around €1,000, which is around $1,200, and I think that's still too much. So we are going to take the dog on the flight with us, or actually with me, since Mike is going ahead of me, and that means I have to take care of everything myself. Not an easy deal, because there is about 3,000 things you have to look out for. First of all, you have to get a transportation container for the dog. That transportation container has to meet certain regulations, and it has to be the right size. Also, it cannot have any wheels, or shouldn't have any plastic locks or screws. It should all be made, the screws should be made of metal. It has to be the right size, which means it has to be big enough that your dog can stand up without his head touching the top, and he can lay down, and it's long enough for him to lay out in the transportation cage. Maybe Mike can put a picture of this on the video, so you'll see one of those kennels that you can use. Next thing is your flight, how to pick your flight. That's not quite easy either. You want to consider that going to the States, it's quite a long flight, and it's going to be rough on the dog if he has to stay on the plane longer than necessary, and if he has to do stops in between, it's going to be even worse. Also, it's more complicated because if you do have stops, then you have to make sure that you don't use different airlines, or that all the airlines that you do use will take your dog. because some will and some won't. Some airlines only take small dogs in the cabin. Some airlines will take your dog in the cargo hold, but only in a certain time of year, like not in the winter time. Some airlines will not take dogs at all. So you have to make sure that your whole flight, all the airlines will take your dog along. And it's kind of a hassle if you get like 2 stops. You have 3 different airlines to get that all under one hat. So the easiest thing for us, we figured, is to try to get a non-stop flight. Easier for me, of course, also, not just for the dog, but you only have to get him on the plane and then get him off the plane again, and no stops in between. You don't have to worry about him being handled during the stops, about him being in a cargo hold at an airport somewhere where it's noisy, where it's dirty, where it's uncomfortable for him. So that for us seems to be the easiest way to get him over there, is to get a direct flight from here to the destination, or in this case as close to our destination as we can make it, which needs to be an international airport. What else? Let me check my list here, what I wrote down. Yes, of course. Also, what you have to check. Everything you have to do while trying to get your dog over there has to be compliant to the import and export regulations, of course, and to the animal welfare provisions, which basically means it's your responsibility to make sure that the dog has the shots that the country requires that you're going to, that he has, that your container meets all the regulations, which is what I told you before, that it has to be a certain size and it has to be in complying to the IATA regulations, which is the International Air Transport Association, and they tell you the size it has to be in the material and all that, and that it can't have any wheels and stuff like that. So this all is your responsibility. You have to make sure that you meet all those regulations and that your dog has all the shots. In our case, going to the States, that means he has to have his rabies shots, which are not supposed to be any older than a year and have to be taken no less than 30 days before he leaves. He also needs a health certificate, which needs to be in English, and he needs to have an international shot record, so naturally that they can check it and read it. But it's your responsibility to do all this. For us, that's gonna come up to, the way we looked at it and the airlines we looked at, probably around 400 euros, which is still less than half of what we would pay if we would hire transportation service for him, a pet service for him, which everybody has to decide for themselves if you can afford it, if it's worth it, if there's an easier way. For us, it's the best way and easiest way, because I don't really want to give him to strangers to take along, and I also want to be there at the airport when he gets there, when he gets there at the same time as me, and I take him through the customs and everything. He's going to have someone familiar with him, and it's not going to be as hard, I think. So this is basically the shortcut on the topic of taking your dog to the US or to a different country. Of course, there's thousands of other things you can look into. There's very many airlines that you can check. Also, depending on where you have to go, and you just got to make sure that you meet all the regulations. That way, you don't miss something, and your dog gets held up somewhere in an airport and can't leave, is put in quarantine or something because you forgot to get his shots or didn't make sure he had all the papers he needed. So this is basically it from me on this topic. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, and if you want to follow us on this crazy journey to moving to the US and becoming American homesteaders, please subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time.